those listening from around the world. This is the moment you've been waiting for. It's time! And now, introducing the host, a strength and conditioning coach, real estate investor, athlete manager, and amateur food critic. He stands 5 feet 11 inches tall, and he's on the road to 185 pounds. Podcasting from around the world by way of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Presenting the one, the only, David Stafford.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Road to 185 show. I am your host, Jared Saavedra. It is episode 12 with David Stafford. David is a realtor. He is a real estate investor. He has an amazing and impressive real estate portfolio. He has 25 properties and near 40 doors of rental units. He is going to be talking to you about how to scale your rental portfolio, as well as talk about some of success stories, essentially, of his clients that he's currently helping that are just starting off brand new in the real estate investing game. So I think you're going to get a lot out of it, and you're going to learn a ton. We had so much to talk about. It was crazy. And we probably only got about 20% done of what I wanted to before I had to let him go. But again, this is going to be a great episode. If you enjoy this content, you like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, you give us a review on whatever platform that you listen to the podcast on. I definitely appreciate it. Without any further ado, let's start episode 12. How you doing, man?
Doing good.
Doing all right?
Busy. That's the way it is.
There you go.
Life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, let's get right into it, man. I told your publicist that, I won't keep you longer than 30 minutes. So, so we could get rocking and rolling, dude. Yeah. Tell me about how you got to where you are today, man, through your real estate portfolio.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up here, and then I was in the Navy for 6 years, but I came back and I started at UNM, and I bought my first house when I was 23, and I was in the Navy with a buddy of mine. We didn't want to rent, so it was in Connecticut, and I bought that house, and we just thought it would be smarter than renting, and we didn't know much then because we were just kids, but we learned a lot, and I actually wound up losing that thing and having to short sell it because the economy this is early 90s. It went down, and I learned how to do a short sale. So I went through the entire process because I was in California on a ship and my tenant stopped paying rent. It was a tough situation, but I learned a lot. Anyhow, I got back, went to school, got an MBA, started out at Sandia National Labs here, and bought my first house while I was still a student on a loan that was 8.75%. But the cool thing was that it had a main house and a guest house. And so the guest house paid for about 35% of our mortgage, which made our share.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was less than what we could rent near the university, or I still own that house today. And so then I was at Sandia Labs. I started working there. And then about 2 years later, we were pregnant with our first daughter. And I didn't like that this one was right on a busy street on Carlisle. So I started looking around and found another house that had a main house and a guest house, but the guest house is upstairs. Bought that and realized, okay, I was in a nicer neighborhood in a nicer house. I now had a guest house and main house rented and another guest house rented. So I was getting more income and my cost of living was going down, and I was moving into nicer places. And I was like, oh, this is pretty powerful. So
essentially house hacking at the beginning.
Yeah, without even knowing it. I mean, I was just kind of organically learning it before house hacking was even a word. So, but I was realizing that it could really work. So then finally 2 years later, and I was just doing this every 2 years. And now I have clients that I help do this, and I'll tell you about one of them shortly. But I moved into, we finally moved into one that didn't have a guest house. I still own those first two. And then I started flipping houses and having bad service from agents because I still had a career at Sandia. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this myself. So I got my license in '04 and started the company. And then in '06, I went to give my notice at Sandia Labs. My manager said, no, please just stay part-time and we'll give you full benefits. So I was like, okay, well, that works. So it just kept growing because it was '04 to '06 and then '06 to '08. And then I left in '08, May of '08 when things were kind of tanking, which is a little bit of a risk. But by that point, because I had toddlers at home and my wife wasn't working at the time. So it was all commission straight out of Sandia Labs, which was a big jump, especially when the market was tanking in '08. But it paid off because I learned the hard way. Yeah. I mean, it was just you sink or swim in hard times. And then that makes the times later seem that much better. And so that I also noticed an important point, just for anybody listening, is that when the market tanked, I didn't have a lot of rentals in, but I still did have probably 4 or 5 tenants already between the two main house guest houses. And I never had to reduce rent a bit, or did I have a lost day of rent? So what I mean by that is I didn't have any vacancy, because if you think about it, what happened in 2008, and if the market turns again, what is likely to happen is that you have less people that can qualify to purchase homes, which means that you will now have a bigger pool of renters. And when you have a bigger demand for rentals, then that's going to kind of hold solid that rent amount. I'm not saying it's not going to be a little soft, but the point is, even when the market turns, rentals are a good hedge.
There's always an opportunity somewhere.
There is. And because I know real estate, that's where I'm biased and I put most of my wealth, and I'm not as diversified as maybe I should be, but I feel like tangible assets that I can do a lot of different things with, especially with low locked interest rates, gives me flexibility to sell on a contract. I can rent it out. Even if I have to reduce rent a little bit, I could sell them. There's so many things that I could do to protect myself in a down market that I feel comfortable and confident in that. And so I feel like it's a safe place to put my money. People may not feel that way. Some people may not want to manage rentals, but we can talk about that later. So I kept looking at the main house guest house angle. And in New Mexico, as you remember, we would call those casitas. And that's really what I look for. It doesn't matter price range, location. If I can get a main house with a guest house, I can really optimize my return. A lot of times it's in a zoning area that's not even allowed. A lot of mine are against zoning, but they don't really go around looking for those. And so I get a much higher return on those. I have more flexibility ever since COVID hit. They're even in more demand because
do you like doing long term on both of them, or do you like to do long term, short term, or short term, short term?
So I have a mix of that, and so my probably about 10 of my properties are main house guest house now. And so that really gives me flexibility, not only in what you were just saying that I'll answer more specifically, but people want guest houses for home office and studio. They want it for multi-generational living. They want it to rent out as an Airbnb for more income. There's so many ways people want to use them now that those properties have a little bit of a premium on them. And so I do have, so I have regular long-term rentals. I have Airbnbs. I have a killer Airbnb down by Old Town, a main house and 2 guest houses.
Oh, man. Nice.
I have one main house guest house near Presbyterian, which is kind of downtown with the other side. And then I have on Harvard, just south of the university, I have 2 duplexes. One's a regular long-term rental and one is decked out for a short-term rental, but I give it to the movie business people. So I have those going with a company called Home Local 505 that rents to Netflix companies. All the production companies come in town right now. Masters of the Universe is here. And so they pay me probably a good 50% more than regular rent, maybe 75% more. But there's some vacancy in there because they have no guarantees on how much they'll be in there. Right. So I'm getting about...
And you have to furnish those whole things, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. But I could rent them out for about $1,500 a month long term, and I'm netting about $2,500 a month.
Jeez.
So
that's beautiful.
A higher return. There's some vacancy in there, which at the end of the year, I think I'm going to be right around $2,000 a month. But that's still 33% more than if I just did a regular rental. And I have no hassle because they do all the cleanings in between. Now they take their cut on that. but my net is going to be about 2,000. So there's a lot of different ways. Now, Albuquerque is unique because we have Netflix and a bunch of movies being shot here. I know Atlanta does a lot of movie shooting too. So you
Absolutely.
probably have this industry growing up there too, but there's this ability to really get movie business people in where they work 16-hour days and they want everything set up, everything paid for. And all they do is pull into a safe garage, walk in, crash, and then do that. So that's what I have on some of those. So there's a lot of different ways. And I also feel like I could do, some people probably use furnished finders for traveling nurses. That's another good one. I haven't done that one yet. I'm thinking about testing that one out. The other day, just south of the university, I saw a 2-bedroom house popped up on Zillow really fast for rent for $10.95. And it was really cute looking little house. So immediately I called the owner and I said, hey, can I come see that this afternoon? And then when I got there, I said, look, I'm going to rent this from you I'll give you a little extra, maybe $1,300, but I'm going to Airbnb this out. And he said, he's like, yeah, that'd be great. So not every landlord will be willing to do that.
Right. But you were up front with him on it, and that's
why not? I mean, also, as I have some benefits to being a broker, a big time broker here too. I do pretty high volume, so I have an online reputation. So I just told him, I said, just Google my name, and you can kind of get a feel for how reliable I am. And that is something that not every investor can do. But if there is a way for an investor to do that, or if there's an agent out there, or I don't know if you have your license. Are you thinking about getting your license?
No, I don't have my license. I haven't really thought about it too much. But it's an avenue that's a possibility in the future. Yeah,
I think it's something you should consider, and we can talk about it another time or offline. But there's reasons that I recommend it. Not everybody does. A lot of books say don't do it, but I do for a lot of reasons recommend it. But anyway, if you can get an online reputation where people kind of feel the trust in you, it improves a lot of ways. Some of the other things we might talk about, I assume, is kind of how to find properties. And sometimes when I'm competing with other people for redemption rights or for somebody's option, there's a lot of sharks in this business when you're talking about flips, and people are scared and they're in this place of uncertainty. Am I going to lose my house? And they're scared and they're not sure what to do, and they don't know who to trust. So if you can be that trustworthy person, and I legitimately want to be, because I want to sleep at night and I want to help people and make money, then it's a lot easier to.
That's what I feel like already sets you apart from most, is because you got skin in the game yourself. You're an investor yourself, where most realtors that I meet and that I talk to online, a lot of them aren't investors themselves. So there's a lot of things that they don't really look for. They just obviously want to sell you something or help you buy, which is fantastic. That's fine. But if you are an investor looking to renovate or flip, burr, whatever it is, it's a lot more helpful if they've been doing it themselves and they understand kind of the game and the numbers behind it.
Absolutely. And I win listings that way, because I tell them, hey, or buyers, I say, when we're walking through a house, I can tell you what it's going to cost, what you might do, how it might look, because I've flipped so many houses. And I think that's an important key point too. But also, I tell people, look, why, nothing against new agents, they got to jump in and do their best. But, why would you let somebody who lives in an apartment, has never bought a house, guide you through the process of buying a house? I mean, it's at some point they're going to have to buy something, and I think they should put their money where their mouth is. And I say, hey, I'm invested in this market. If you don't think I pay attention to this market when I have this many properties, I am going to pay attention to what's going on, whether I'm going to determine if I'm buying, if I'm selling, what am I doing with my portfolio? And so I think that's a key point. I do have to keep my finger on the pulse more than your average agent. I think that's important. So anyway, what wound up starting to happen, to finish the story real quick, I don't want to go on it too long, is that I started flipping more and more, and I started holding some. And so here's a key part. One of the biggest questions and one of the biggest challenges is, how do you find your next property, especially in this market, right? I mean, it's super hard and super competitive. And right now it is a challenge, but I buy them out of regular MLS. I'm buying them from referrals, because people I know that know I do this. I'm buying them from wholesalers, and then holding them, because a lot of wholesale deals aren't so great anymore, right? They're all like slim margins. But if they're not good for flipping, guess what? Oftentimes they're really good for holding. So they're still better than regular market value. So a lot of the ones I picked up in the last couple of years is my wholesaler guys going, hey, I've got this house, and I go check out the wholesale deal. And I'm like, man, nobody was going to want to flip this. The margins aren't quite there. But I would love to buy this because I still think it's a good enough deal for rent to hold for rental. And a lot of times those people are motivated enough to consider real estate contracts. So many of the recent ones I picked up were supposed to be flip deals that weren't quite good enough that I picked up on real estate contracts.
So how do you make that decision though? So if a wholesaler comes to you and says, hey, I got this house, what's the return that you're looking for? I mean, I've seen numbers from kind of all over the place, wide range when it comes to like rental, like long-term rental. What is kind of like your sweet spot?
I know. Okay. So I can give you a perfect example. Is one investor had two deals that he was an attorney in northern New Mexico and he was tired of them. And I saw them both and I agreed. I made him a proposal on a real estate contract that was going to mean the cash flow was going to be negative on both of them. He had never raised rents in like the last 6 or 7 years. And his rents were like literally 50% low. Like they were 900 at 975 and 925, and they should have been like 1,300 and 1,400. Now they should be like 16 and 18, maybe even 18 and 20, 2,000. But I saw A, that they were super low, and B, that he would put it on a contract with only 10% down. So I went in immediately. My cash flow was negative, but I've already rectified that. This was about 2 years ago. So I'm slightly positive now, and I'm going to keep raising slowly. I don't want to raise too much on a person. I'm not a slumlord.
Mm-hmm.
I have a heart and I want to raise, but I got to be reasonable. There's families there. And so eventually I'll catch those up. The point is I got them on a low fixed interest rate with 10% down. And I also had good equity in there. So it's kind of like when you walk into a car dealership and they go, hey, what payment do I need to get to put you in a new car today? Well, it's because they're playing with all the different terms. And so anybody that's thinking about real estate investing or starting out has to be very, very comfortable with, just Carl's mortgage calculator or, a spreadsheet that they put together. I'm a spreadsheet person, so I like to use those. That you can tweak any of those, how long your term is, what your rate is, so that you know whether or not it's a good deal. And so that sounds overwhelming to some people, the financial math, but it's not really that hard. And once they get it, it gives them a real advantage and a real confidence in making a decision to go. Because I was like, man, I've never bought a house where my cash flow is negative. I have to start contributing for this mortgage. But I knew on paper that this was going to pay off, and it did. But a more specific answer to your question is this. I just use cash on cash ROI. So I say, how much cash is this going to take? What's the down payment going to be? What am I going to have to put into it? And then what is my monthly net going to be? And if my cash on cash is 10% or more, then I buy it.
10% or more. Okay.
For me, it's cash on cash.
For the people that are listening, so for people listening that don't kind of understand that, so if you put, just say 20,000 into the deal, into the whole deal, that's your 20,000 in, and your cash flowing, or $200 a month.
Yep.
Over the year, that's 2,400, and then you just divide that by the 20,000, and then you get your percentage.
And that's going to be 11% right there. So I'm going to buy that one. That's the example you just used. Yes, I'm buying that. Now, there's other factors at play. And if I can get into something like the two I just mentioned that were not good cash flow, or way less down, because your average investor has to put 20 to 25% down right now. If I can get in for 10% down or less, then I'm willing to take a smaller return because it's not hitting my credit report and I have more cash available to buy more properties. So there's so many variables as you're deciding, but if you're trying to grow quickly, then what you want to do is try to usually conserve cash so that you can buy more. You can worry about some of the finer financing details later, as long as you're putting properties that make sense under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
But, so that's what I've slowly done. It's just, I flip a few until I get some money to buy a rental. And then, I buy one, then I flip a few more, then I buy a few more. And it's just slowly persistent over 20 years. It's like with any financial advice, if you just hang in there and you be persistent, it begins to really pay off. And key to holds are that as time goes on, each month that your tenants are paying that mortgage, it's a bigger chunk of principal. And then for me, some of mine are 15 years in. It's like now every month they're paying $1,200, but 500 is going towards principal. And then I just start looking at my spreadsheet and going, man, I've got 25 properties paying an average of, 300 a month. That's 7,500 a month. That's almost 90,000 a year in equity. That's building up just in amortization. That's not even worrying about what the market does. Then if you take the market going up another 2 or 3%, and I'm adding, right now I've got probably, it just depends on how many properties you have. But the point is between amortization, appreciation, and cash flow, you're just making so much. So that really is the key. But one of the questions that everybody asks is, and I've got some young guys that I'm trying to take the lessons I learned in 20 years, 25 years, and giving it to them and saying, hey, here's all the things I learned. Here's what not to do. Here's what to do. And so I've got two guys right now. One of them they both just got out of the military. One about 3 years ago and one maybe about 2 years ago, but he hadn't bought a property yet. He was one of my tenants. So I'm going to give you these two stories real quick because I think these are really key.
Yeah, absolutely. I love stories.
People want to hear. Okay, so one of the guys, like me, he got out of the Navy and he had his parents co-sign on his first owner-occupant house. So he only had to put 5% down. He bought that. He fixed it up a little bit himself. He rented it out. And then he bought a fourplex, moved into one of those, cleaned it up, rented them out, bought a triplex. This is all in 3 years. He's 26. And now Thursday this week, two days from now, he's closing on 2 triplexes right next to each other. That's going to be his 6th property in 3 years. And so he's going to have 3 triplexes, a fourplex, and a single family home with a guest house and another single family home. And
that's amazing.
Like 26 or 27. And so
well, let me ask you this with that specific example, because I think there's a lot of people who they're probably thinking in their mind, how is this guy qualifying for these homes and financing? That's what scares people on it.
Well, so that's another interesting thing. Not everyone who hears this may know what Sandia Labs is, but you do. But it's a very conservative place, right? I come from military Sandia Labs, so I'm fiscally conservative. And people, when I left Sandia to do real estate, people are like, "You're crazy, you must be a risk taker." And I'm a calculated risk taker. Yeah, you have to take some risks to do real estate, but you don't have to take crazy risks once you understand real estate, once you understand the math. So what he's been doing is he has been able to buy, every year he buys another owner occupied. Now he bought more than just every year because he's already on the 6th property. But what he was able to do for the 2 triplexes he's closing on Thursdays, he's putting down 20% on those. So he's not able to buy those owner occupied. But he was able to refi 2 of his earlier properties because he fixed them up, just kind of the BRRRR method, right? So he fixed them up and the market went up. So he pulled $130,000 out of those 2 already. And those are becoming his down payment for the triplexes. So it's 60 and 60. So he's got 120 to buy on Thursday. So that'll leave him with 10. So he'll be a little low on cash there. But the point is he's trying to buy as many properties as quickly as he can. Now, this to get more details of what you're saying, every time he buys, the rent from and this is where lending has gotten a little bit liberal again, a little more flexibility. It's not 2007 again, and never will be, but they're loosening up a little bit. And so he's able to count the rents from his past. As soon as he moves out of one, he's able to count the rent on that new rental and count the rents on the one he's buying, so that his debt to income ratio isn't even affected, because the rents are good enough right now on the properties he's buying that they're pretty much offset. So
is it still 100%? Because what I've had to do on my rental property this last year, I mean, it's 75%.
True. So remember, he's mixing in buying owner occupied with buying finance, right? So he's trying to buy owner occupied as often as he can, like every year, like, okay, owner occupied, put 5% down. And then he's saving up as much money as he can. And he's refinancing. and he's getting as creative as he possibly can. Because on the triplexes, he's got to put the 120. He's got 120 to put out Thursday, which is crazy. But he pulled that 120 from the refis on the earlier ones that he fixed up, a little bit of equity on his own equity, plus the market went up. So he's been in a good place to do this the last 3 years, because what better 3 years could he have been doing it? So he has that benefit on, timing was a good benefit for him, but he's still taking advantage of that. It's a matter of being prepared to take advantage of opportunities that makes people accelerate quicker, right? So that's what he's doing. So he's able to really not hit his debt to income ratio and use the refi money and to be able to do this. And then I'm going to talk to him more after we close on Thursday to see what the next plan is. But I think what our next plan will be an owner occupant again later this year. And then he'll rent out the house he's in. And so he'll buy that 5% down, which at this point, he's starting to get some cash flow building up. So he's starting to have a snowball of more and more cash flow. So I think by the end of this year, we'll buy another owner occupied, because it will have been a year since he bought it. And so if every year he's buying an owner occupied and he's pulling out what he can from the ones he bought a couple of years ago, and now cash flow is starting to build. He's really getting this snowball and momentum that's carrying him. And so,
what's your recommendation when people do this strategy, the owner occupied, they live there, they stay there for the year, if it's FHA, whatever it is, and they stay there and they leave? Do you suggest people to put that home, that triplex, duplex, whatever it is, into an LLC, or does it? Well,
so I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you why it's good to do some of those things. The main reason in real estate, there's accounting reasons, but the main reason in real estate for putting things into an LLC is because of liability. Mm-hmm. So you just don't want to get sued for something or somebody getting hurt. But there are other ways to protect you from that. You can, homeowners insurance protects you from that. If you get an extra, you got to pay attention to your homeowners insurance on that. But also you can do a general liability umbrella policy. I do LLCs, but from what I understand from attorneys that I've talked with, if you were ever on title, if I take it one that I was on title in my own name and I put it into an LLC, then I still have limited protection because I was on chain of title individually. And so it is possible that I could still be found liable, but I'm not an attorney and I don't want to test that in court.
Right.
But
right.
That people need to talk to an attorney that sets up LLCs and, partnerships and does asset protection to determine how they want to do it. Right now, I do purchase any property that I don't have to personally finance in LLCs for that reason. I don't do an LLC for every property just because the accounting gets burdensome, but I do maybe for 2 to 4 properties in an LLC, and then I'll do another LLC and I'll do a couple properties in there. Now, if you're flipping houses, it makes sense to buy it in an LLC, flip the house, and then burn that LLC. Just let that LLC close, because then there's more proper protection. Maybe you flip 2 or 3 in that LLC and then be done with it.
Okay. Doesn't it help you from like a tax perspective though? Is if your lender asks like, hey, do you have any other, do you own any other homes? And you say, well, technically my business does. Does that help, or does that help your debt to income?
It does in a way. So if you're personally qualifying, then, and you personally qualify for the loan on that, even if you stick it in an LLC, it doesn't change anything. You still have that liability against you. But for me, at this point in the game where real estate is my career, is my business, and my tax return shows like I can't, when I flip a house, it's not, capital gains, how long did I hold it? It's regular, ordinary income for me. So I'm taxed a shitload more on
say whatever you want.
Yeah, I am taxed a lot more on what I make on a flip. But all of my the way I qualify, it does get a little bit convoluted, but the way I qualify, it's helpful at this point because of the way my LLCs show the money. But it's a little bit more than we want to go into here. A, because it's convoluted, and B, because I let my accountant and my lender.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I will say this, one important point is once you find a really good lender that knows their stuff, like they're not new to this, they know their stuff, and they give you good rates and fees, and you can trust them, which is what I have, then that lender has everything I need. And even though I am really hard to qualify just because of all of my stuff, she makes it happen, and she can make it happen quickly because she just gets an update from my bookkeeper on all the things she needs. So that's kind of important, is you find a really good lender that knows their stuff and you stick with them, and that'll make life a lot easier because they'll say, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's how to navigate it. Because for instance, I'm coming up on the limit of 10 mortgages. You can only have 10 residential mortgages. Then you have to roll some into a commercial mortgage. Now, because rates are gone up, I'm like, oh man, do I really want to roll something into 6% when I'm locked at 4% on these others? No. So but what you can do on that, this is what Matthew will eventually start doing. He's my Navy guy, is even if you have 10 mortgages, they can't prevent you from buying another owner occupant. So he can get an 11th one for an owner occupant purchase. So he'll do that. And then another year later, he'll do another owner occupant. And so you can still add mortgages. He just can't, once he hits 10, buy another investment one with a mortgage. But at some point, he'll have his first one's dropping off, or he'll roll some of them into a commercial loan, and then he'll keep buying and using this, beneficial financing of owner occupant buying. And so he's really going after it. And his job, he doesn't make a ton of money, but what he does is he has good credit, and his debt to income is just this, and he's using cash from the other properties. So he's just being persistent, over time. He's just like, okay, this is the plan. So my other guy just closed on his first one 3 weeks ago. He's used his VA loan, and he was one of my tenants.
And that's 0% down, correct?
0% down. And he bought a main house with two apartments on it. It's really a triplex, but so he was paying me $1,000 a month for rent in a place, and he had gotten out of the military not too long ago. He has good credit, and he said, "Hey, can you help me find a house?" And I said, "Yeah, but if you're willing to not just go find a house that you can afford to move into it, but if you're willing to, you don't have kids yet. He has a girlfriend but doesn't have kids. If you're willing to move into not the greatest area and a triplex and live in one of those units for a year or two, I can really show you how to accelerate, your wealth building in real estate." He's like, "Yeah, I'd love to learn about that." Sure enough, we find him a triplex in an okay area. It's not sketchy. It's actually better than the place he's renting for me. And he got it for $300,000, 0 down. His total mortgage is $1,700 a month. He's getting $800 and $600 from the two tenants, which are low. They both could bump up price, $150. And so that means that his share of the mortgage will be $300, and he's moving into a nicer, bigger place than he was in. So he's going to live there for $300 a month plus water. He'll pay water for everyone, so his utility fee a little bit more. So in the meantime, he's like, and he goes, "I can't believe this." He closed on it like 3 weeks ago. So he's moving into this nicer place, and his cost of living is going way down. And so he's like, "Well, what's the next plan?" And I was like, "Well, you can't use VA again. He wouldn't have enough room in this VA, although we have to look a little closer to see when he would, because you can buy 2 houses on a VA now."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just one. But so I said, "Look, just save up the 20% down, because you're not paying $700 a month. If we just go from what you're paying rent to your new mortgage, you should at least be saving your $700 a month. And if you can save more than that, then let's just save up as much as you can over the next year. If it takes 2 years, that's okay. And in his case, it might take 2 years. But until we've got the 20% down, and then we buy another property. And then, although, wait, we don't even do 20% down. See, I'm scratched out. I'm already jumping ahead. He's going to have to eventually. But he's going to do the 5% down. So that's going to make it easy. So his goal is to try to do it in 12, 16 months, to where he's got enough money where he can do another owner occupant purchase. Won't be VAs, won't be 0 down, but it'll be 5% down. And so he's going to buy something like that, main house, guest house. And then when he moves out, he'll be able to rent the main place he's in for probably about $1,100. So his share was $300, but I think he'll be able to raise the rents on the other 2 to make it down to about $100. So he'll be netting probably about $1,000 a month off that property next year when he moves out. And I mean, that's pretty awesome.
That is amazing for someone that age. I mean, I'm just learning all this stuff. At this age. So for someone to be doing that is pretty impressive, and it's possible. And that's part of why I even started this show, is to talk to people like you, to give, help people give these strategies to them and show them that, yeah, people are doing it all the time. You gotta learn how to play the game.
Yep. So I know we don't have a lot more time, but the other thing that I would touch on is that, the ways to get properties it's hard to find anything in MLS, right? But it's putting the word out there. It's going to auctions on the courthouse steps. Those are still good ways to do it. I don't know how redemption rights works in Georgia, but in New Mexico, that's kind of the cutting edge of finding properties is track. Even if you have no money, there's a lot of bird dogs out there that are tracking down people that have missed their third payment. The list pendants has been filed, and they knock on doors and they say, hey, we'll give you, $100 now to sign over your redemption rights and $10,000 if we execute them. And that means that if they lose the property and we redeem the property, meaning we buy it back from the courthouse sale, then because anybody that gets foreclosed on across the country has the right to buy that back. And most people probably know that, but some don't know that. And that redemption right is transferable, which means it's transferable. You can charge somebody for it. So that's what's happening here in New Mexico is everybody's chasing redemption rights. And then they redeem the property. And so that's another way to do it. And that doesn't take a lot of money. It does take a lot of time. But if you're able to track down people that are in trouble and offer to buy their right of redemption to buy that property back if it does foreclose, then at least they get some money. If the bank, I always say this to people, don't let the bank determine all of your future. Every move that happens, you have some control, even if it's just to get money for your redemption rights.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have some control even before then, because a lot of people stick their head in the sand when they're in trouble, and you have to find a way through to their psyche and say, wait a minute, you just stick your head in the sand, you're giving complete control to the bank, and they're going to screw you. It's not that the intention is to screw you. It's just that the process that they use is going to screw you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people understand that, then they tend to start to slow down and listen to you. Once they realize that you're actually trying to help them, they get some traction on that. So
absolutely.
Let's see. I had a couple of notes just before I called you. People put out a lot of mailers and websites. You see signs everywhere. I haven't done that too much. I used to, but then when Obama took office, everybody thought he was going to save them from being foreclosed. So that was their answer when I called them.
Yeah.
I think one of the things to do is dig for numbers a little bit more, like the example that I gave you, where, even though the cash flow is going to be literally negative, I could see the other positives. And that's why there was no competition. There was nobody else buying for those properties. And they're two really good ones for me. Now, my guest house thing, which is something that I kind of fell into early on, is something that I think is interesting that a lot of people don't know about, but it's kind of a different niche market or property that I specifically actively, aggressively look for. And so things like that. But sometimes you get houses on the MLS that don't have photos.
Mm-hmm.
It dismisses those. Sometimes they've been on the market a really long time, and you might just be there, right place, right time, because the seller is frustrated. I've picked up a few like that.
And so they'll let it go for a lot less.
Yeah.
They're that frustrated. They want to get out. And their realtor probably didn't do a great job of getting photos for them. I think that's an opportunity for a lot of people.
It is. Now, those are needle in a haystack, but reality, when you're starting out in this and you don't have a ton of money, it's really time. What do you got? You got to put your time in. I did this late at night after kids went to bed for a lot of years, and it just eventually that stuff pays off. But and then I think my best encouragement to somebody doing this is that the first few years are hard, and then you really start to feel the traction. And once you're already feeling it, I think, and once you start feeling
absolutely,
it's kind of gets exciting, and then you have more energy and excitement, which is like a wind at your back. It's really pushing you instead of that wind at your front. You start to feel that wind turn, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I was excited when I started. It got really hard. A lot of people quit then. You push through that hard point, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, this is starting to move. I got momentum. And so you get past the inertia, you feel the momentum, and it's pretty cool.
Awesome, man. I know you got to get that. We'll end on that. I got to get you back on again. Shoot, I honestly, I don't think we got through 20% of what I was planning on. So I got to have you back again, man. I really appreciate your time. How can people get a hold of you if they want to contact you? I know there's going to be a few people who reach out. What's the best way?
You can call or text at 505-750-3360 or email me at 360ventures@gmail.com or just Google David Stafford Albuquerque and you'll find me.
Awesome, man. David, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. You're a wealth of knowledge for sure. And I think using those two examples of your clients, like that taught a lot of people right there that there's ways to succeed in this game. So thank you for that.
You got it. And next time I won't talk so much. I'll let you ask me some specific questions.
No, man, that's perfect. No, the stories. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that can relate to those. So that was perfect. I just got to have you back on maybe a couple more times. So we'll get rocking with that. So, all right, David, I'll let you go, man. I appreciate your time. This episode will be out probably next week or the week after.
Awesome. All right,
cool.
Man. Yeah, so I saw your Facebook on your new house looking good.
Yeah. We just got our appraisal today. We'll refinance in a couple of weeks and then see what's good from there. So,
nice.
Thank you, man.
All right,
brother. Talk soon. Thank you.